Princess Alara's hands trembled as she pressed them against the cold marble railing of the palace balcony. The early morning sunlight spilled across the courtyard, turning the dewy gardens into a sea of gold and violet. She wanted to enjoy it. She wanted to breathe in the scent of the iridescent blossoms, to watch the humming birds flit between petals, to smile. But she couldn't. Not yet. Her eyes, larger than ordinary, glowed faintly under the soft light, betraying her otherworldly heritage. She turned her gaze to the carved fountains instead, avoiding the curious eyes of the palace staff below. Each day, they watched her as if she were a fragile statue, beautiful, untouchable, untamed. Their whispers curled around her heart, and she flinched at the smallest noise. "Ilara," a voice called suddenly from the garden below. It wasn't loud, but it carried a warmth that made her startle. She froze. The name, spoken so naturally, had a weight she didn't recognize in anyone else. She squinted and saw him, a young man with calm, steady eyes, dressed in the pale blue and silver armor of the palace guards, though he moved with the ease of someone not bound by duty alone. He stopped under the archway, bowing slightly, his gaze not just on her, but through the layers of hesitation she wrapped herself in. Ilara wanted to look away, but curiosity, raw and uninvited, tugged at her chest. Something about him made her feel less fragile. The garden, usually a sanctuary, suddenly felt like a stage. Servants hurried past, glancing at the princess, whispering her usual cautions: do not speak, do not meet anyone's eyes, do not bring attention. But the young man didn't flinch at her glow, at the faint shimmer of her skin, at the strange, delicate tilt of her ears. He simply stood there patiently, as if the entire palace could burn around them and he would remain unmoved. Her heart thumped loudly, though she tried to pretend otherwise. She wanted to retreat. She always wanted to retreat. But the pull in her chest stopped her feet from moving. She had never seen anyone dare to stand in that quiet way, without expectation, without judgment, without fear. "I," she whispered, but the words caught in her throat. "Princess," he said softly, his voice like polished silver sliding through warm honey. "You don't have to hide." The words struck her harder than any command or reprimand ever could. She turned her gaze just slightly toward him, but not enough to meet his eyes. His calm presence wrapped around her like a shield she hadn't realized she craved. A sudden rustling in the garden startled her. A bird, glowing faintly like the flowers, flitted into the fountain. She gasped, stepping back, her gown brushing the balcony floor. The young man's hand lifted almost instinctively, not touching, not intrusive, but ready, protective. Ilara blinked. Something inside her shifted. She had spent her life hiding, spending years under the weight of courtly expectations, her own secret fears, and whispers of strangers who wondered if her alien features made her a creature of omen. And yet, in that moment, someone had crossed the invisible line she had drawn around herself and simply stood there. The palace bells chimed far below, reminding her of duties, of appearances. She wanted to vanish. She wanted to curl into the shadows of the corridors and never show her glowing face again. But his steady gaze held her in place, not forcing, not commanding, just present. Her lips parted again, hesitant, fragile. The first words of connection she'd spoken in weeks trembled in the air. And then he smiled. Not a polite court smile, but a real, quiet, unafraid smile, and the air seemed to hum differently. The sun caught on his hair, and the glittering garden felt almost alive, as if acknowledging that something was about to change. Ilara's pulse raced. She wanted to ask his name, but the words stuck again. Something about him made the palace walls seem smaller, the whispering staff less oppressive. She wanted to believe, against every instinct honed from years of hiding, that she didn't have to be invisible anymore. But before she could take a step closer, a shadow flickered behind the archways, a figure moving with purpose. Someone who did not belong, and the young man's eyes, sharp and calculating now, shifted toward it. The garden's golden light suddenly felt heavy. The first real choice of her life loomed, and for the first time, Ilara felt that she might not have to face it alone. The figure moved quickly, a blur through the sunlit courtyard, and Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She pressed her hands to her chest, the pulse in her throat loud enough that she feared the young man would hear it. He did hear it. He always heard more than she expected, and before she could react, he was already stepping down from the balcony with a grace that made her gasp. "Stay back," he said quietly, not raising his voice, but every syllable carried authority. His eyes scanned the courtyard, sharp as a hawk, but never leaving her entirely. The figure, tall, cloaked, and moving with unnerving speed, paused at the edge of the rose gardens where sunlight flickered over the petals like fire. Alara's instinct was to hide. She wanted to vanish behind the carved marble pillars, to disappear into the maze of flowering hedges. But something held her in place, a quiet strength radiating from him like an anchor in a storm. The young man approached slowly, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of a small dagger at his waist. "Who are you?" he demanded, calm but unflinching. The cloaked figure laughed, low and hollow, a sound that made Alara shiver. "Just a friend," it said, voice like silk draped over glass. "A friend who brings warnings." Alara frowned. Warnings for her? She tried to read the figure's face, but the hood shadowed every detail. She noticed how the sunlight caught on the hem of its cloak, glittering strangely, almost unnaturally. Her pulse raced. Something about this figure felt wrong. The young man's jaw tightened. "We're not interested in riddles. Leave now." His calm tone carried a warning, but it didn't break. There was no anger, only certainty. The figure tilted its head. "You think you protect her? You don't even know what she is." The words made Alara flinch. She had heard them before in whispers, murmurs of her alien features being an omen, but this voice said it without fear or malice, only intent. "Enough," the young man barked, and for the first time Alara noticed the controlled power in him. It wasn't brute force, but something sharper, an authority that made the air itself seem to tighten. The cloaked figure hesitated just for a moment. That moment was enough. The young man moved faster than she thought possible, slipping between the shadow and the rose bushes with a fluid grace that made her stomach lurch. He wasn't rushing recklessly. He was deliberate, like a predator guarding what mattered most. Alara wanted to call out to follow, but fear rooted her to the spot. Then, as if sensing her hesitation, he glanced back. His eyes met hers for the briefest second. Not demanding, not instructing, just steady, reassuring. "I am here. You are safe." Something in her chest unclenched. She had spent her life avoiding eyes, hiding her glow, pretending that the world's curiosity didn't matter. And yet, in that one fleeting look, she realized that she could stand beside him, that she could, maybe, face this. The cloaked figure's laugh turned sharp, almost a hiss, and it surged forward like a dark wave. The young man intercepted it, their movements a blur. He didn't strike recklessly. Each step, each motion was precise, a dance of defense. And then, just as suddenly, the figure vanished, leaving only a faint shimmer in the sunlight, like a mirage fading too quickly to grasp. Alara exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her mouth. What was that?" she whispered. He turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Trouble," he said softly, "but not for long, not while I'm here." His gaze held hers this time, and she couldn't look away. She felt a heat rising in her cheeks, not from fear, but something warmer, deeper. The world had always told her to shrink, to hide her glow, to be small and silent. And yet, for the first time, she wanted to shine, not for the courtiers, not for the whispers, but for him. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers, not touching, just offering. Alara wanted to step forward, but hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, every shadow of her past demanded retreat. Yet something in his presence, the quiet strength, the unwavering calm, pulled her forward. She took a small step. His hand lowered and their fingers brushed. Not fully, not deliberately, but enough to send a jolt through her body. Her glow flickered, soft and iridescent, as if responding to him. "Princess," he said, voice soft now, almost a whisper, "you don't have to face it alone." Alara's lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust. But before she could respond, a soft chime echoed from the palace tower, an urgent, unfamiliar note. It wasn't the bells of morning, it was a warning. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, otherworldly scent. She shivered, realizing that the cloaked figure was not gone, and whatever it wanted, it wouldn't leave so easily. He turned, eyes narrowing, and she instinctively stepped closer. And in that moment, amidst the roses and sunlight, something unspoken passed between them. A promise, a connection, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could stop avoiding the world. But danger was still out there, hidden in the shimmer of shadows, and Alara knew that their quiet moment of trust was only the beginning. The palace courtyard, bathed in late afternoon gold, felt suddenly alive with tension. Princess Alara clutched the railing of the balcony again, her fingers leaving faint traces in the smooth marble. She hadn't expected danger so close, so real. And yet, standing beside her, the young man, whose name she now knew was Kale, radiated calm. His presence was a steady flame in the storm. "Are you hurt?" Kale asked softly, glancing at her. His eyes, dark and unyielding, scanned the courtyard as if he could see threats hiding in the shadows themselves. Alara shook her head, though her pulse raced. "No, I'm fine, but who was that figure?" Kale's jaw tightened. "Someone who knows more about you than they should, and someone who isn't friendly." His gaze softened slightly as he looked at her. "But they won't get to you, not while I'm here." Her heart fluttered. She had spent her life learning to hide, to avoid eyes, to remain unseen. And yet beside him, beside Kale, she felt a strange courage. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to stand tall and show herself, even if only to him. Before she could respond, a sudden ripple ran through the courtyard. The wind shifted, carrying a faint shimmer that made the flowers tremble. And then, without warning, the cloaked figure reappeared, stepping from the shadow of an archway with unnerving grace. Kale moved in front of her instinctively, a barrier of calm determination. "Stay behind me," he ordered gently but firmly. Alara's breath caught. She wanted to obey, wanted to hide, but a stubborn part of her bristled. She was tired of hiding. The figure's hood fell back, revealing pale, angular features that seemed almost ethereal. Its eyes glimmered with unnatural light. "You can't keep her forever," it said, voice like wind over ice. "She belongs to a world she doesn't understand." Alara's chest tightened. A world she didn't understand. She had never known safety, never known freedom. And yet, here in this golden courtyard, she had a choice. Kale's hand rested on the hilt of his dagger, his stance relaxed but ready. "She belongs wherever she chooses," he said. His voice carried weight, and for the first time the figure hesitated. Alara felt something surge within her, a spark she had tried to bury. Slowly she stepped forward. Her glow intensified, soft and iridescent, illuminating the courtyard in gentle waves. She looked directly at the figure for the first time. "Stop," she said, voice trembling but clear. "I am not yours, I decide." The figure recoiled slightly, surprised by her defiance. Kale's presence at her side gave her strength, but it was her own words, her own courage that made the figure falter. You can't even," it began, but Kale's dagger gleamed in the sunlight as he stepped closer, eyes locked on theirs. "Back away," he said, calm but unwavering. "Now." The figure hissed, then vanished again in a shimmer of wind and shadow, leaving only a faint trail that smelled faintly of iron and ozone. The courtyard fell silent, the tension hanging like a heavy curtain. Alara sank to the ground, knees trembling, and Kale knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" he asked again, his voice soft now. "No," she whispered. I'm okay." Her glowing eyes met his. "Thank you for standing by me." He offered a small, reassuring smile. "I will always stand by you. You don't have to face anything alone." For a moment the garden seemed to breathe with them. The flowers glimmered, the fountains sparkled, and the sunlight danced across her skin. She realized that for the first time she didn't want to hide. She didn't want to avoid eyes. She wanted to be seen, by him, by the world, if necessary. And yet the shadow of the cloaked figure lingered in her mind. Whoever it was, it had not given up. The world outside the palace was vast, dangerous, and filled with secrets she had yet to uncover. But with Kale at her side, she felt something she had never known before: hope. Kale extended his hand, gently, not demanding, not rushing. Alara took it, and as their fingers intertwined, the sunlight caught the connection between them, weaving a fragile, unspoken promise. The palace bells chimed once more, signaling the evening hour. And somewhere beyond the walls, in the shifting shadows, the cloaked figure watched, waiting. Alara's breath caught. She realized that the next step would be the hardest yet. She would have to face not only the figure, but the fear that had controlled her all her life. And she wouldn't be alone. The evening sun slipped behind the palace towers, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Princess Alara wandered the quiet hallways, her fingers brushing along the carved walls. Every corridor held memories of whispered warnings, of servants glancing with hushed curiosity, of the careful measures she had taken to remain unseen. Tonight, however, she felt different. The spark that had awakened in the garden lingered, a subtle warmth in her chest, and she could still feel Kale's steady presence even after he had left her side to alert the guards. She paused outside the old Hall of Ancients, a wing rarely visited by anyone but the Royal Council. The doors were carved with swirling symbols, glowing faintly in the moonlight. No one had told her what they meant, though legends spoke of hidden truths sealed behind these walls, secrets of the royal line, and of those born with luminous gifts like hers. Her curiosity outweighed caution. She pushed the doors open, and the hall exhaled a faint, musty scent of ancient parchment and stone. The glow of her skin reflected off the polished floors, lighting the room in soft waves. Every step echoed. Every heartbeat sounded loud. She felt like she was intruding on something forbidden. A faint rustle came from the far corner. Alara froze, eyes widening. Someone or something was there. She held her breath, her glow pulsing nervously, and then Kale stepped into the doorway, his expression calm but alert. "You shouldn't be here alone," he whispered, his voice a grounding presence in the vast, shadowed hall. I had to know," she admitted, her voice trembling but determined. "There's something about this place, about me, that I don't understand. I need to understand." Kale nodded, stepping closer. "Then we'll face it together." As if answering her unspoken fears, the hall itself seemed to respond. The symbols on the walls shimmered faintly, and a soft hum filled the air. Alara gasped, her hands brushing against the carvings. She felt a sudden warmth spreading from her fingertips, a gentle vibration like the heartbeat of the palace itself. Kale watched her closely, his eyes unreadable but full of quiet trust. "Alara, whatever this is, it's part of you. You don't have to be afraid of it." Alara swallowed hard. She had spent years avoiding her glow, hiding her elongated ears, pretending her unusual eyes were a curse. And yet here in the silent grandeur of the Hall of Ancients, she felt a strange belonging. Something inside her shifted, a sense that she wasn't broken or strange, just different, special, and connected to a world she had yet to discover. A sudden chill ran through the hall. The shadows seemed to gather in the corners, and a faint whisper echoed. Alara turned sharply. A figure, tall, cloaked, impossibly silent, stood near the far end of the hall. Her heart raced. Kale moved instantly, placing himself between her and the intruder. "Who are you?" he demanded. His dagger gleamed in the dim light, though he didn't strike. The figure's hood fell back, revealing the same pale, angular features as before, but now their eyes glimmered with a cold intelligence. "You cannot hide forever," the figure hissed. "She belongs to a destiny beyond your control." Alara's pulse thundered. She wanted to shrink back, to vanish, to avoid confrontation. But Kale's steady presence emboldened her. She stepped forward, her glow intensifying, illuminating the hall. "No," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I choose my destiny, not you, not anyone." The figure recoiled slightly, surprised by her defiance. Kale's hand brushed hers, a silent gesture of support. Together they stood as one, a shield of courage and trust. The cloaked figure vanished again, leaving only a faint shimmer behind, like smoke curling in the wind. The hall fell silent, and the symbols on the walls dimmed. Alara's breathing was ragged, but she no longer felt fear alone. She had faced a shadow and survived. Kale's gaze met hers, warm and unwavering. "You were amazing," he said softly. "You're stronger than you know." Alara's lips curved into a tentative smile. She had spent so long avoiding eyes, avoiding the world, avoiding herself. And yet here, in the quiet glow of the Hall of Ancients, she felt something new: courage, connection, and the first real taste of freedom. A distant chime echoed from the palace tower. But this time it didn't carry the same sense of warning. It was a signal, a reminder that danger still lingered. But for the first time, Alara knew she would not face it alone. And as the shadows deepened in the corners of the hall, she realized that the cloaked figure's presence was not the end, but the beginning of a journey that would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. The grand palace ballroom shimmered under 1,000 golden lights, casting reflections across the polished marble floor. Ilara's chestnut hair gleamed, her gown flowing like liquid silk as she moved carefully among the nobles and dignitaries. Tonight was a celebration, one of the few events where the entire court gathered, but her heart was heavy, still echoing with the memory of the cloaked figure and the Hall of Ancients. Kale stayed close, his presence a constant shield, eyes scanning the crowd for threats. He had warned her repeatedly to keep her glow subtle, to blend in. But tonight, the very air seemed to hum around her, as if sensing the courage she had begun to claim. Some guests whispered as they passed, eyes lingering on her luminous skin and alien features, but she didn't shrink away. Not this time. And then it happened. A hand touched her shoulder, not lightly, but with a deliberate weight. She flinched, and Kale moved instantly, his hand brushing over hers, protective. She turned slowly, heart hammering, only to see Lord Varin, one of the king's most trusted advisors, smiling warmly. "Princess Ilara," he said, bowing low, "a pleasure to see you this evening." Something in his tone sent a cold ripple down her spine. She had known Varin's kindness in appearances, but something felt off. Her instincts, sharpened by recent events, flared. Before she could speak, a faint shimmer ran through the ballroom. Guests turned, murmurs rising like wind over water. The cloaked figure was here again, moving through the shadows, unnoticed by most, but impossible to ignore by her. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "Stay close," he whispered. Ilara felt the warmth of his touch, and for the first time in her life, did not want to pull away. She nodded, her eyes narrowing at the figure slipping between columns and tapestries. Varin smiled again. "I see you've brought your companion," he said softly, glancing toward Kale. His words were smooth, polite, but there was an edge to them, a hidden threat. Kale stiffened. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice low, careful. Varin's smile faltered just for a heartbeat. Then he laughed lightly. "I mean nothing, of course." But the way his eyes flicked to the far end of the ballroom betrayed him. He had been signaling the cloaked figure, an ally in the shadows. Ilara's stomach dropped. Betrayal. The thought of someone she had trusted, someone the palace had praised, colluding with the entity that haunted her, made her chest tighten. Kale's gaze met hers, sharp and unwavering. "We need to move now." The ballroom erupted in confusion as the cloaked figure struck, shrouding the area in a swirl of shadow and wind. Guests screamed, scattering in panic. Ilara's glow flared instinctively, illuminating the room with soft, iridescent light, revealing hidden exits and pathways that most would never notice. "Follow me," Kale shouted, leading her through a secret passage behind the throne. Ilara stumbled but kept pace, her hands brushing the cold stone walls. Every step carried tension, fear, and something else, a fierce determination she had never known she possessed. They emerged in a smaller hall lined with mirrors, where the glow from Ilara's skin multiplied in reflections. She caught her breath, feeling the weight of her own power. The cloaked figure appeared at the far end again, its presence almost liquid in the air, ready to strike. Ilara looked at Kale. I can fight," she said, the words trembling but firm. Kale nodded, "and I'll be right beside you together." For the first time, she realized that her fear of being seen, the avoidance, the hiding, was no longer a weakness. It was a choice she was leaving behind. The ballroom, the betrayal, the shadows, they had brought her here to this moment, and now she would face them. The cloaked figure surged forward, and Ilara felt the power within her awaken fully. The light from her skin pulsed, extending in waves that pushed back the shadows. Kale's hand found hers, grounding her, and together they stood against the threat. In that hall of mirrors, with their reflections multiplied endlessly, Ilara finally understood. She didn't need to avoid eyes anymore. Not Kale's, not anyone's. She was no longer hiding. And the battle, both within and without, was only beginning. The night sky hung heavy over the palace, stars blinking faintly above towers that gleamed like silver in moonlight. Inside, the halls still smelled of smoke and tension. The cloaked figure had retreated, leaving only a faint shimmer of its presence in the corridors. Ilara's chest heaved, and Kale kept one arm loosely around her shoulders, guiding her through the labyrinthine palace. "I've never seen anything like that," Alara whispered, her glow still soft but steady, painting their path with luminescent waves. I didn't know I could do that. Kale's gaze met hers, steady and warm. You've always had it, he said gently. You just never believed in yourself, and I'm not letting anyone make you think otherwise. Her heart skipped. His words, soft but unwavering, resonated deeper than any palace lecture or courtly praise ever could. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to trust fully, to rely on someone without fear, to let herself be seen. A sudden clatter echoed from a nearby hallway. Shadows twisted unnaturally and the temperature dropped. The cloaked figure was back and not alone. Behind it, several figures emerged, their eyes glinting with unfamiliar light, their movements precise and dangerous. Kale stepped forward, positioning himself in front of her. "Stay behind me," he ordered, though his voice held no fear, only resolve. Alara's pulse raced, but she refused to move back. Instead, she drew in a steadying breath, her glow intensifying, spreading across the hall like gentle fire. She could feel the hum of the palace beneath her feet, a rhythm that pulsed in tune with her own heartbeat. The cloaked figure advanced, voice low and menacing. "You cannot escape your fate, child of the stars. Your power will belong to us." Alara's glow flared brighter, illuminating every corner of the hallway. "No," she said firmly, voice echoing. "I choose who I am, I choose my path, and I choose him." Her gaze met Kale's. The words weren't just spoken, they were a promise, a tether, a connection that bound them both against the shadows. Kale's hand found hers again, grounding her, and together they stepped forward. The first attack came as a blur, a shadowy whip lashing toward them. Kale deflected it with a swift movement of his dagger, his other hand gripping hers to pull her out of harm's way. The closeness sent a shiver through her. She realized with startling clarity that in the midst of chaos, she had never felt safer than in his presence. "Focus," Kale said, eyes sharp. "Use your light, it's stronger than you think." Alara's hands rose instinctively, her glow extending in a radiant arc that forced the shadows backward. Each pulse of her light seemed to hum with energy, resonating with the palace itself. The figures faltered, recoiling from the brilliance, their attacks weakening. Kale moved beside her seamlessly, guarding her flank, their movements synchronized as though they had been practicing for years. The battle was fierce, but for the first time, Alara felt the thrill of control, not fear, not hiding. She was part of the fight. She was seen. The cloaked figure hissed and vanished again, this time taking its allies with it, leaving behind only a faint ripple in the air, like heat over stone. The hallway was quiet, save for the sound of their ragged breathing and the soft glow of Alara's skin. Kale turned to her, his hand still holding hers. "You were incredible," he said softly, his thumb brushing the back of her hand. "I knew you could do it, but seeing you step into your power," his words faltered, then continued, "I'm proud of you." Alara's heart ached, not from fear, but from something warm and new, something she had never let herself feel before. Pride, yes, but deeper than that. A connection, a trust, a bond that went beyond words. She looked up at him, her luminous eyes reflecting the moonlight, and for the first time she didn't look away. I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. Kale's gaze softened, unwavering, "And you never will have to." For a long moment, the palace seemed to exhale with them, the danger momentarily at bay, and yet the shadow of the cloaked figure lingered at the edges of their minds. They knew it wasn't over, not by far. But in that hallway, bathed in their shared glow, they had faced fear together. And in that, a fragile, unbreakable flame ignited between them, a promise that no shadow, no threat could extinguish. The journey ahead would test them further. The palace, the world outside, the destiny whispered by the stars, all awaited. But for now, they had each other. And that was enough. The palace courtyard glowed under the full moon, petals from the iridescent gardens drifting like silver snow in the night air. Princess Alara stood at the center, her chestnut hair catching the moonlight, her gown flowing with a gentle shimmer. Her glow pulsed softly, a steady heartbeat that mirrored her own. Beside her, Kale's hand rested lightly over hers, a grounding presence against the tension that hung thick in the air. Across the courtyard, the cloaked figure emerged from the shadows, more distinct than ever. This time there was no hesitation, no retreat. Its eyes, sharp and unearthly, glimmered with dark intent, but Alara did not flinch. "You cannot escape," the figure hissed, voice echoing like wind over stone. "Your power belongs to the world beyond. Your destiny is not your own." Alara's gaze swept over the palace gardens, the glowing fountains, the arches that framed the starlit sky. For years, she had avoided eyes, avoided the world, avoided herself. And now she finally understood. Her power, her uniqueness was her choice. Her destiny was hers alone. "I am not yours," she said, voice ringing clear and unwavering. "I am me. I choose my path, and I choose who stands with me." Kale tightened his grip on her hand, his eyes locking with hers, filled with quiet strength and unwavering trust. "And I choose you," he said simply, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Always." The cloaked figure snarled and surged forward, shadow and wind swirling in its wake. But Alara did not retreat. She raised her hands, and her glow erupted into brilliant waves of iridescent light, illuminating every corner of the courtyard. The petals shimmered and danced in response, the fountains gleamed like liquid silver, and the palace itself seemed to hum with her power. Kale moved beside her, his dagger flashing, but this time he did not shield her. He moved in perfect harmony with her. They were not two individuals fighting, they were one. Light and strength, courage and trust bound together. The cloaked figure struck, its shadowy tendrils lashing toward them. Alara's glow flared brighter with each pulse of her heart, and Kale's presence amplified it, as if the very force of their bond fueled her power. The shadows screamed and faltered, unable to withstand the brilliance of her light, and with a final surge, the figure dissolved into nothingness, leaving only a ripple of fatting wind. Alara staggered slightly, breath trembling, and Kale caught her effortlessly. "You did it," he whispered, his forehead resting briefly against hers. "You faced it all and you won." Tears pricked her eyes, not from fear, but from relief, from triumph, from something warmer that had been growing inside her since the first moment he had stood by her side. "We did it," she said softly. "Together." Kale smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her glowing face. "Together," he repeated. For the first time in her life, Alara did not look away. She let her gaze meet his fully, letting him see her glow, her alien features, her vulnerability, and her strength all at once. And in his eyes, she saw not judgment, not fear, but unwavering love and trust. The palace gardens, once a place of whispers and shadows, now felt alive with magic. The fountains sparkled, the petals danced, and the wind carried a melody of victory and hope. She realized that the world she had avoided, so vast, so uncertain, so filled with danger, was also full of beauty, connection, and the possibility of love. Kale leaned closer, his lips brushing hers gently, a promise that no darkness could sever. Alara's glow pulsed warmly, mingling with the strength of her feelings for him. She had spent so long hiding, avoiding eyes, retreating from life. Now she embraced it all, the danger, the magic, the love, and the light she had within herself. I don't have to hide anymore," she whispered, resting her forehead against his. "No," Kale said softly, "you never will again. I'll be by your side." The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter as if blessing the moment. Alara felt the palace, the gardens, and the moonlight itself celebrating her courage. She had faced the shadows, claimed her power, and discovered that she was stronger than fear, braver than doubt, and capable of love deeper than she had ever imagined. And in that courtyard, under the endless night sky, the shy princess finally stopped avoiding eyes. She looked at Kale, he looked back, and together they stepped forward into a world full of light, unafraid, unstoppable, and utterly alive.